killed and ate her.
What
Here are 10
the
serial killers.
Today on the channel, we are checking out 10 children serial killers who confessed on camera.
Preyed on her innocence, took her life, and sent a letter to her parents about how he viciously killed and ate her.
What
Here are 10
the
serial killers who confessed to their atrocious crimes on camera. Number 10. Ted Bundy.
And now of Ted
Developed in
Bundy.
me to the point
Know
where
the
I
name
began
of it,
to act
and he
out
was a
on
killer.
certain very violent and very destructive feelings.
May 6th, 1975. Ted Bundy picked up a 12-year-old girl named Lynette Dawn Culver. He offered her a ride home but ended up taking her to his hotel. After sexually abusing her, he drowned her in the bathtub of his hotel and went on to dispose of her body in a river. This is just one example of the many minors Ted Bundy molested and killed. Born in Burlington, Vermont, November 24th, 1976, Ted Bundy was a rapist and serial killer. At first glance, Ted Bundy looked like every girl's dream man. He had charming looks and held a degree in psychology from the University of Washington. But he also had a dark and twisted mind that led him down a path to destruction. 1974 was the year it all began, with Ted abducting, sexually exploiting, and murdering 2 young women in Washington. And when his crimes went undetected, Ted Bundy went to abduct and rape dozens of more women, including minors. He found his victims by driving through different states in America. He would offer any woman he found sexually appealing a ride. Then when they got in, he'd knock them unconscious, sexually abuse them, and strangle them to death. The bodies would be then dumped back on the road, and he'd drive off. He's also allegedly responsible for the killing of 8-year-old Anne Marie Burr, 14-year-old Catherine Devine, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, and so many others. What baffled most people about Ted Bundy was how detailed he was when discussing how he murdered his victims for what he had done. But all that didn't matter, because on January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed with the electric chair in the Florida State Prison.
I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment.
He knows.
Number 9. Jeffrey
Know the
Dahmer.
name as well.
He was on the couch, lying down with drilling technique had already been applied. And
The name Jeffrey Dahmer is pretty popular on TikTok and other social networks for 2 reasons. 1 is a Netflix documentary on him, and 2 was for his cannibalistic escapades back in the 90s. But did you know that Dahmer was also a child serial killer?
What?
Dahmer was born on May 21st, 1960, to parents Lionel and Joyce Dahmer in Wisconsin. As a child, Dahmer was a pretty normal kid, at least so everyone thought. But there was something odd about him. For one, he was a little too awkward around people, and 2, he had an odd fascination for dead things and animals. Then in his teenage years, when he began consuming excessive alcohol, he also found out he was gay, and he kept it to himself. Then after failing at almost everything he did, his killing spree began. He killed more than 16 men, 2 of which were 14-year-olds. He lured them into his apartment, preyed on them, killed them, and dismembered their bodies. And as if that wasn't brutal enough, he went ahead and cooked body parts because it made him feel closer to the smelt like death.
I'll probably have to live with it for the rest of my life. I wish it would go away. I wish there was some way to completely get rid of the
compulsive thoughts, the feelings.
But unlike some serial killers, Dahmer was reserved and wished he could pay back for his own crimes. And after standing trial, he was sentenced to 15 different life sentences. Sadly for him, during his time in prison, he was murdered by another inmate. And according to the story, Dahmer didn't fight back because he actually wanted to die.
Damn.
Number 8. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley.
Never heard of them.
The couple Ian and Myra met in 1961, and it just so happened that Myra was deeply in love with Ian. Her obsession led her to do anything Ian wanted, and one of the things he wanted was for her to commit the perfect murder with him. Sounds crazy, I know, but then, in this case, love made them do silly things. On July 12th, 1963, they set out to find a victim. Myra drove in a van while Ian followed on a motorcycle. They abducted 16-year-old Pauline Reed while she was on her way to a dance. They took her back to their apartment, sexually assaulted her, and slit her throat. Their next series of victims were John Kilbride, Keith Bennett, Leslie Ann Downey, and Edward Evans. But after the murder of Evans, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley were caught, arrested, and charged to court, where the judge gave them multiple life sentences. However, Brady died of restrictive pulmonary disease on May 15, 2017, while Myra had passed away from years before from bronchial pneumonia on November 15, 2002. But shortly before that, she said this in an interview.
After the Leslie Ann Downey murder, I didn't think in terms of redemption.
Number 7. John Wayne Gacy. If there's anyone out there who has a fear of clowns, his crimes caught up with him after he was arrested for the murder of Robert Piest, a 15-year-old boy who lived in his neighborhood. During the investigation, the forensics team identified the body parts belonging to more than 10 different boys buried in his basement. But for some reason, John kept denying these allegations against him. In many interviews, he kept disputing the fact that he had never known these boys.
If they want to be convinced they're brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
He also tried disputing the fact that he knotted a rope around the necks of his victims, inserted a stick in the knot, and twisted it around until they were dead. But no matter how much he tried to deny his involvement in over 30 different murders, John Wayne Gacy was found guilty and sentenced to death in 1980. He was placed on death row for 14 years before being executed with lethal injection on May 10, 1994. During those 14 years on death row, John Wayne Gacy still kept denying ever knowing those victims. So could his story be a case of chronic mental disorder, or was he just oblivious to his own crimes?
Look over at the photos. I have no recollection of any of them. Never met him.
Number 6. Albert Fish. This one right here will send chills down your spine. Albert Fish was born on May 19, 1870 in Washington, D.C. His family is said to have had a long history of mental illnesses. His father passed away while he was still a toddler, and his mother placed him in an orphanage when he was still very young. But while in that orphanage, Albert Fish was tortured and sexually molested. By age 12, he began enjoying this torture, and about 2 years later, he left the orphanage and reunited with his mother. By 20, Albert had become a sex worker, but at the same time, he grew a fetish for sexually abusing minors from 5 years of age and below. As crazy as that sounds, Albert also abused himself. He would insert needles and nails of a specific length into his abdomen and groin. But one of his worst crimes came in 1928, when he murdered, cooked, and ate an 8-year-old girl who went by the name Grace Budd. Albert was close to her family and pretended to invite the little girl to a birthday of his niece. But in that dark reality, there was no niece, and Albert did an evil deed. After, he wrote a sadistic letter to the girl's mother, describing in detail what he had done to this poor girl.
I took her to an empty house in Westchester I'd already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I didn't, I would get her blood on them. When she was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry, and I tried to run down the stairs. I grabbed her, and she said she would tell her mama. First, I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death, and then cut her into small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook it and eat it. How sweet and tender her little was, roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body.
The letter was traced back to Albert, and just like other serial killers, he wasn't sorry for what he had done. He said God instructed him to torture those children and that nobody's a saint. Finally, he was sentenced to death and executed on January 16, 1936 via electric chair. Number 5. Luis Alfredo Garavito.
I ask the Colombian people to forgive me, to give me the opportunity which maybe I deprived many people of.
Luis Alfredo Garavito is a Colombian serial killer born on January 25, 1957. As a child, Alfredo was abused by his father while he witnessed his mother's infidelity. So when he became older, he grew a fetish for poor little boys who needed help on the streets of Colombia, or orphans. And Alfredo would take these little boys on the pretense of offering them money, food, and clothing. But in reality, he would take them to the woods, sexually abuse, torture, and then murder them. But it wasn't just the fact that these things mattered, it's how he did them that makes it worse. Alfredo was an alcoholic, and a bottle of liquor was always found at the graveside of his victims. He would sometimes slit their throats, decapitate them, or cut off their genitals and feed them to the victim while they were still alive. As grotesque as that is, it's not even the worst of it. A Colombian judge.
Nah, they gave him mercy, bro. Oh, okay, yes, they're about to say something else here, but that is crazy. 22 years.
Turned down his release plea, and there's no saying when he'll be getting out.
Very likely that Garavito would be released. Not only likely, it's inevitable. There is no such thing as life without parole.
There is no death penalty.
Number 4. Dennis Nilsen.
And the guard hauled the body out onto the floorboards, put it on the sheet, and then cut it out.
Dennis Nilsen, often referred to on social media as British Dahmer, was born in Scotland on December 23, 1945. And just like Jeffrey Dahmer, Dennis was a serial killer and a cannibal, just based in London. The tales of Dennis's atrocities began in 1974 when he lured a 14-year-old boy to his apartment for a couple of drinks. The young boy and Dennis both slept after having those drinks. But when Dennis woke up in the morning, he didn't want the boy to leave, so he made him stay, and by that, I mean, he killed him. From there, Dennis went on to kill many more teenage boys by luring them into his apartment. And after killing them, he would perform some depraved acts of masturbation on their corpses, sleep next to them, or even lay next to them while he watched TV. Dennis revealed that the reason for this psychotic behavior of his was to satisfy his loneliness and sexual urges. It was revealed that after he had murdered these boys, he'd keep their bodies beneath the wooden floor of his apartment. And if he ever missed them, he'd carry up the semi-rotten corpse and lay next to it. We find Dennis's case describing a man with extreme loneliness, but it doesn't justify the sadistic things done to those innocent kids. And it wasn't until 1981 that his evil deeds began catching up with him. October 1981, he left his old apartment behind. But first, he exhumed all the bodies beneath his wooden floor and burned them in the woods behind his apartment. To conceal the smell of burning flesh, he threw a tire into the fire, and that might have been effective in some sense. But at the same time, the things he did in his new apartment weren't so smart. At his new apartment, Dennis continued murdering young boys, but this time there was no place to hide their bodies. So he dismembered them and stocked their body parts in plastic bags. At the same time, during the process of dismembering these bodies, a few chunks of flesh and bones got wasted, and Dennis tried flushing and sticking them down the drain. Doing this almost repeatedly blocked the drainage system of the entire apartment complex. Neighbors began complaining, and when plumbers were called to come check out this issue, human body parts were found. Then the police got involved, and it wasn't long before the evidence was traced down to Dennis's apartment. He was arrested, charged to court, and given a life sentence. But after battling health problems while in prison, Dennis ended up dying in 2018 at the age of 72.
All gone. Everything's gone. There is nothing left. But I still feel a spiritual communion with these people.
Number 3. Anthony Kirkland.
And I am responsible for the death of those 4 young ladies. I do not even know why I did it.
Anthony Kirkland is referred to as was called a monster because of his lack of self-control. Between 1998 and 2003, he was placed in solitary confinement 21 times for disciplinary control. And in the last 9 months of his time in prison, he was sent to solitary 4 times for breaking the rules or fighting other inmates. We all know what solitary confinement does to people, and for a man like Kirkland, it made him lose his mind. He went on a sexual abuse spree, killing 4 ladies between May 4th, 2006 and March 7th, 2009. And amongst the 4 ladies, 2 of them were minors. He would rape, kill, and burn the bodies of his victims to hide the evidence. But after killing his 4th victim, Esme Kenny, Kirkland was arrested near the scene because he was in possession of her watch and an iPod. But on August 28th, 2018, a Hamilton County judge agreed with the jury's recommendation and sentenced Kirkland to death. As of right now, he's on death row at the Chillicothe Correctional Institution.
I think it's time to let him.
Number 2. Robert Black.
I'd be driving along, I'd see a young girl. I'd get out and talk to her and try to persuade her to get into the van. And take her somewhere quiet.
1963. A man named Robert Black kidnapped a Scottish 7-year-old girl whom he took to his house and sexually abused. By the time the girl was unconscious, he had held her by the neck and masturbated all over her body.
No, man,
He was charged with lewd
bro.
behavior and didn't even get any jail time for this.
Ouch.
He was only subjected to a few therapy sessions before they let him go.
Wow.
And letting a man like Robert Black go was probably the worst mistake ever made. Robert Black was in Scotland on April 21st, 1947, and was involved in the molestation and murder of 4 girls between the ages of 5 and 16. After his first run-in with the police in 1963, 2 of his neighbors complained about him inappropriately touching their children. He was sent to a rehabilitation center for 6 months, but that didn't help as well. Robert then began watching illicit content of children, and his disgusting obsession with underage girls grew stronger. And on August 12th, 1981, he kidnapped a little girl, molested, killed, and dumped her body where no one would find it. Robert Black continued molesting and killing these minors until one day he tried adopting a little girl known as Teresa Thornhill. While Robert was driving around the neighborhood in his vehicle, he spotted Teresa and invited her into his murder van. But while she was getting in, a neighbor, David Herkes, saw her get in and suspected that she was being kidnapped. He then calls the police and describes what the van looks like, launching a search for the vehicle. But then out of nowhere, David Herkes spotted the van once again around the neighborhood, making him direct the cops to where it was parked. When the police forced Robert to open the van, they found Teresa tied up and gagged in a sleeping bag. He had already molested her with his fingers, and he was looking for a good location to end her life and drop off the body before he was found.
Like, happy that I've survived the tale, but then I look back and think about the poor girls that haven't survived, and I sometimes feel so guilty.
Robert Black was charged to court and sentenced to life imprisonment, but he died of a heart attack in 2016, and David Herkes, the man who spotted Teresa in the van, will forever be known as the best neighbor. And number 1, Javed Iqbal, born in Lahore, Pakistan on October He said he committed these acts as a form of retaliation for what the police did to him and his family. He claimed to have been arrested on charges of sodomy, and on hearing the news, his mom had a heart attack. So as a form of retaliation, he said he would make over 100 mothers feel pain the same way his mother felt it. In November 1999, Pakistan launched a nationwide manhunt for Iqbal, and a month later, he turned himself in to the authorities. He was sentenced to death by hanging. The judge added that his body should be cut into 100 parts and dissolved in acid, the same thing he did to those poor boys. However, Iqbal ended up committing suicide in his prison cell before his execution.
So they do that in Pakistan, bro. Pakistan crazy. He's like actually doing the same crime that he done to the others. They're doing it to him. Pakistan is crazy, bro. But that won't help. He's gone, yeah, but he's gone. Wow, what the hell? I think it's the tiredness catching up to me now, bro. But yo, guys, if you just want me to check out more videos like this, let me know in the comment section, please. So, yeah, let's get cooking.